Meeting to order. Do we need to do any roll calls or anything? Probably should.
Yes,
Keep the legal people happy.
absolutely. Mr. Brady? Mr. Moncher?
Here.
Mr. Ramey?
Here.
Mr. Nichols?
Here.
Mr. Rusatz?
Here.
Mr. Stahl?
Here.
Mr. Orzak?
Here.
And myself, Ms. Reeder, are here.
Okay, so our first order of business is the minutes of September 13th, 24 that was sent to you in advance.
I move approval.
We got a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second? Any discussion? We needed, all in favor, say aye.
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 Both same sign? Okay. New business. Michelle sent me the meeting dates, and I said, we got to start somewhere, okay? So let's just pick the dates similar to what we have for this year, and we understand that everybody can make everything, and if there would be something critical, like if we need to meet with the auditor or something, we would just call it a special meeting. So I think that's more for information purposes. So when you look at it, if you can't make one, it's understandable, but we go from there. But like I said to Michelle, we have to start somewhere. So.
Right. So you guys will see the dates that we looked at are at the bottom of the agenda. Were February 14th, June 13th, September 12th, and December 5th. They're all Fridays again at 8 a.m. here at City Hall. And I will send a calendar invite out to everybody so we get them on everyone's schedules.
Well, I didn't hear anything from Mr. Stahl to start him at 8:30, so we'll stick with that.
7:45.
Okay, Michelle, November financial statements.
All right, so here we go. We'll just jump into November. On the screen, you guys will see our major revenue for the general fund. Our blue line here is income tax. Income tax, we saw a slight increase in November compared to November of 2023. We were up $269,000. The admissions tax, shown here in gray, we saw a decrease. It was a decrease of about $155,000. And then on the lodging tax, we saw a small increase there of $330,000. So lodging tax, we have more year-round events going on, more people staying here year-round, and I think that's the reason that we're seeing additional lodging tax here. Here's the total general fund revenue. It goes back to 2019. We were at $22 million, and this year we're hitting $34 million. One thing to continue to note for this year is that we did have a $900,000 advance that was repaid to the general fund this year. So that was a short-term loan. We saw the expenditures last year, but it's showing this year's revenue. So that kind of skews the numbers. When we're looking at revenue, November of 2023 compared to November of 2024. If you take away that advance, we're only up $200,000. So it's not as great as what it looks like right here. On the expenditure side, so the blue line at the top is going to be the support, admin support, which again is the transfers. We've done a lot of additional transfers since 2022. That's when we had the Cedar Fair partnership deal where parking and admissions tax got increased to 8%. So there's additional transfers that go from the general fund over to the capital fund. The red and blue line are kind of running together there. Those are the police and fire departments. Their expenditures are very similar to each other. And then the yellow line at the bottom is municipal court, and the gray line would be the horticulture and public realm. No large increases to any of those. If we look at the expenses by categories, yellow line again is the transfer amount. We're down slightly in transfers compared to where we were at the same time last year. This year we're at $13.2 million. Last year we were just above $15 million. And the blue line here is wages and fringe benefits. Wages and fringes have gone up. As we've known, we've had raises over the years. So we're going to see that continue to climb. The other factor that factors into this is health insurance. Health insurance was increasing since 2022. At the bottom, contractual services. In 2019, we were at $2.3 million. This year, we're about $3.4 million. That's a combination of everything costs more. So any kind of service that you're contracting out is going to cost you more. and the same thing with supplies and materials, but supplies and materials have remained pretty stable for us. Here's a look at the general fund expenditures and transfers lumped together. This is the total general fund expenditures. 2019, we were $19.7 million. In 2024 now, we were at $31.5 million. Last year at the same time, we were at just over $31 million. This here on the last slide shows the general fund cash balance here at the end of November. We ended November of 2024 at $7.8 million. Same time last year in 2023, we were at $7.9 million. So very consistent, very similar to where we were at the same time last year. When we talk about the budget, I do have a slide that shows, the history of the cash balance and also at year end what it looks like to have a 20% cash reserve. That's our goal, is to target about a 20% cash reserve. Right now with the expenditures, we're looking to have about a $6.9 million carryover at the end of the year, and that would be 20% of what we have expended for the year. So everything looks to be on target, no big surprises, which is great.
No surprises is a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. Number of full-time employees. Mr. Murray asked that I compare the employees this year compared to last year. So this chart looks a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. So in blue, you'll see the 2024 numbers. This lists the employees by department. The orange line is where we were at this same time last year. So no big changes. Police and fire are going to be your biggest employee counts for us. We do have fire fully staffed. Police department, we still have 3 positions that are open, and that's a revolving door. So we've got people in the academy. They're actively recruiting. As far as other changes, it looks like the sewer plant, they have 18 people now, where they had less last year, and same thing with the water plant. It's shown here as BIWW, which is Big Island Water Plant. So we have those departments fully staffed. But that's where the 250 full-time employees are in 2024. And that's all I have for November financials. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
So we're into December at some point, well, at least 6 days. Does things look like we're going to be pretty much on track for the end of the year?
Yeah, yes. No surprises.
That's the exact amount.
No, we look to be on track. We do have, when we talk about the budget, we'll go into this a little bit more, but we do have contract negotiations that are ongoing with our 3 unions. So we have a police union, a fire union, and then we also have an AFSCME union. Those union talks are still ongoing. We do not have any contracts settled for, the contracts that expire here at the end of the year.
I'll make a motion to approve the November reports as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sure, it's nice to come in and hear positive reports.
Absolutely.
And the comment that I made, coming in here, thank God I look at the rendering when I come down Columbus Avenue.
It'll be great when it's done.
It's going to be great.
So can we move on to the Benefits Committee? They met earlier this week. So the Benefits Committee has to meet at least once annually, and this is to look at the administrative employees' wages and what we need to do for the next year. So the committee met. You guys should have it at your chair. This affects 39 employees that are administrative employees. So these are employees that are not covered under a union, not police members, fire members, or an AFSCME worker. So 39 administrative employees, they recommended a 3%. 3% is the same thing that we have been offering to the other unions for wage increases for 2025. One thing to note is our city manager has elected to take only a 1% wage increase. Everybody else on this sheet is 3%. The total increase would cost the city $91,341.28. On the far right columns, you'll see it's split between general fund, water fund, sewer funds, park and rec, nuisance, which is our code department, and also transit. If anybody has any questions on the recommended wage increase, I'm happy to answer questions.
Obviously, in some other years, we had looked at what some of the negotiated dollar amounts were. I'm not disagreeing with what we got here, but, so, I think you can't put the cart before the horse, and we know we have to get going, because we have no idea when the negotiations will be done, so.
Correct.
I think this is reasonable. Thanks, John, for your 1%. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
What I would like, okay, so
I think it's accurate to point out also that although we've agreed on a 3% raise for the non-collective bargaining employees, that number can be revisited. I'm not saying it should be, but it can be revisited at any point in time after negotiations are over with our three unions. And I think it's probably fair to at least acknowledge the fact that that number, that 3% is not cast in stone, that we have the ability to meet. We do meet once a year, but we have the ability to meet multiple times if that adjustment is required.
I think what I am going to be looking for is a recommendation to the commission from this committee that we find this to be acceptable. Reasonable, acceptable, something to that effect.
So made.
Motion
Second.
made,
Second.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do a roll call on that one, please.
I'm sorry?
Let's do a roll call on that one.
Okay, do a roll call on that one. Another question. I know you've handed this out as a public document, but I would suggest or make the comment that we just leave these here and they're not spread all over. I know somebody can come in and get it, but let's make them get it. So,
Fair enough.
okay, so,
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Moncher?
Yes.
Mr. Ramey?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols?
yes.
Mr. Rusatz?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mr. Thomasula?
Yes.
Mr. Orzak?
Yes.
And Ms. Reader, can I abstain? I don't know how that works. Like, I'll just abstain.
Anybody can abstain at any time.
Okay.
Yes.
It still passes.
Yeah, good note to the abstentions for everybody getting the raise. I just noticed Mr. Murray snuck into the gallery back there. I hope the hell you're not part of the public participation.
In a year. Oh. Baby. Just overslept, so.
I would suggest that Mr. Murray return to the table, and I'll go back to the peanut gallery where I belong.
Good, that makes me feel better.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You ready to roll with the 2025 budget?
Yes, try to get,
So everyone would have received the full budget, so there's many, many lines. So we're not going to stay here all day. I'm happy to answer any questions, meet with anybody individually that wants to review things further. I sent you guys the budget along with another version that had comments on why things may have increased or decreased, but if anybody has any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. So it's that time of year, we have to do the 2025 budget, and just as a review of how the budget timeline works, we had the first draft of the 2025 budget out. It was out by November 1st. Today, we're meeting with you guys here at the Finance Committee with hopeful to get this budget recommended to City Commission. City Commission is set to have a public hearing and the first reading of this budget on Monday of next week, December 9th. Before the end of this year, we do have to get a temporary budget passed, so we have something that we're working off of prior to getting a full budget passed. We'll have the temporary budget at the City Commission meeting on December 18th of this year. That is the last commission meeting of the year. And then the plan is, we cannot pass the budget, this is per our charter, prior to this first meeting in January, which is always the second Monday in January. So this budget will be presented back to Commission in January at their meeting on January 13th. If it is their desire to pass it at that time, the budget will be in effect at that time. If not, we have until the end of March to get the final budget passed. We will have that temporary budget in place, so we will have a budget that we will be operating on. So there is not a huge rush to get this finalized. As I mentioned earlier, the 2025 wage increases, everybody is included in here at a 3% wage increase. So those are factored in here. Adjustments will be made as contracts are finalized if needed. The revenue figures, as always, are going to be conservative. Nobody wants to be seen showing balloon numbers on a revenue side and then things not coming in where they need to be. So we'll be conservative on the revenue. This is really just an operation and maintenance plan. The capital plan will come back in first part of next year with all the capital plans that we have, ideas, and everything will still need to go through commission for approval. Anything over $10,000 goes back to commission. So when you see the capital plan, that's the administration's wish list of the capital items that will be handled in 2025 and beyond. It's a 5-year plan, but that will be coming back to you guys hopefully at your February meeting next year. One other thing to note that I didn't put on here is that the ARPA funds, so time flies. We had 4 years to spend ARPA funds. We are now at the end of ARPA dollars. ARPA is the American Rescue Plan dollars, also known as COVID relief dollars. We had over $18 million that we received, and we had until the end of 2024 to obligate those funds. We have items coming to commission this month that will make sure we obligate every dollar, every penny. There will not be anything going back to the government. We've been able to find good uses for every one of those dollars. In the future, there will be a presentation on where exactly every one of those dollars went once all the plans are finalized and every project is coming more towards completion. We'll be able to give you the final figures of where those dollars went. Looking at the 2025 budget, here is a slide showing the revenue, and it's just kind of neat to see. Went all the way back to 2014 on purpose. 2014 is prior to having any issue $8 in our pocket, obviously way before we had any increase to admissions tax or parking tax. You look at 2014, our general fund revenue was just over $16 million. You go all the way out to 2025 on the right, you'll see that we're hitting $32 million. So we've come a long way. We have doubled our revenue since 2014. So in 11 years, it's quite, it's been a blessing. We've been able to do a lot of great things with the extra dollars that we have coming in. If we look at the breakdown of where those dollars come from, this pie chart shows you in the big green on the right, income tax dollars account for $13.4 million of our revenue. It's about 42%. The other largest piece of the pie here is admissions tax in blue. It's just over $9 million. It represents 28% of our general fund revenue. Income tax and admissions tax together is about 70% of everything that we see in revenue. So obviously when we had COVID and nobody was working and nobody was going out and visiting amusement parks, we saw a tough time. But this is the biggest piece, like I said, is 70% coming from emissions tax and income taxes. The other pieces of the pie in yellow here is departmental revenue, making up about just over $3 million. That's revenue that we receive from our police department. We do bill back for our services at Cedar Point through that new agreement where we provide the police forces there. We bill back for that. The fire department, the first $400,000 of their EMS revenue goes into the general fund. So that's reflected here. Municipal court and other small departments will make up that departmental revenue column. In the dark green is our property taxes. So property taxes, not even $2 million. $1.8 million is what we typically see in property taxes. It's only 6% of our revenue in the general fund. Lodging tax, very similar to that. They're at $2 million. It's in that brighter blue color. As we move along the pie there, local government funds that we get from the state, $876,000 is the estimate for 2025. Light green is our interest earnings. Interest earnings have been very interesting. So this year, we've seen about $1.5 million in interest. That is largely due to the dollars that we had from the American Rescue Plan that were sitting here. We had them invested. We've been earning interest on it. So going into next year, we're not going to see $1.5 million. I have it in here as an estimate of revenue of $935,000, which is still substantial. I mean, there's days that, we had $100,000 a year for interest. So interest rates will probably be declining, so we'll see a drop in interest, and we also have less cash available in 2025. That's the reason for the decrease in revenue there. Miscellaneous and then parking tax, those columns grouped there, about $400,000 each coming into the general fund for revenue next year. So all those figures total up to be that on the right side there, $32,058,000. And you'll see when we get to the next slide of expenditures for the general fund, we're at $32,049,000. So we are showing about $9,000 more in revenue in 2025 than expenditures. So definitely a balanced budget, no issues at this point. And anybody feel free to stop me if you have questions as we go through this. This shows every single fund that we have. So this shows the 2022 budget, 2023 budget, the initial budget for 2024, along with the year-to-date column of where we're at currently. This is as of December 1st, and then the 2025 proposed budget. This lists every fund. We have 36 funds that we have to budget for. They all have their different rules and regulations. There's not a lot of big changes on here. You'll see right now the budget for the general fund, $32 million. Previously last year, we budgeted almost $31 million. As we go through here, not a lot of changes. Coronavirus here, you'll see this one goes to a 0. Fund number 240, that is because the ARPA dollars will all be on purchase orders and promised by the end of this year, and that's per the guidelines that we need to have them encumbered by the end of this year. Federal grants, you'll see a large increase here. We've done really good with the grants, and this grant is the RAISE grant, so this is the one that's going to get the pathway to go from the causeway basically across Heminger Ditch, or to Heminger Ditch. And then we'll have the landing park project that will pick it up at the Heminger Ditch and get you back behind the sports center. So we have a $5 million, over $5 million in a RAISE grant, and then we also have funds from Marcy Kaptur for the South Side Plan that are showing here in the federal grants line. And I forgot to mention here on the state grant line, you'll see that we're up to $3.1 million in state grants. That is also another great opportunity that the Community Development Office worked really hard to get a grant called Welcome Home Ohio, which will provide additional housing for people here in the city of Sandusky. There's a $3 million grant that's in the budget for next year, revenue side and expenditure side. So anything you see on the expenditure side is offset with additional revenue. Moving on to the additional funds here on this next slide, capital projects, there's a difference here. Like I said, we'll be back to you guys with a capital plan that will show, all the dollars that are intended for capital projects in 2025, and the budget will need to be amended once projects are finalized and approved through the commission.
When you bring back the capital, would you also bring back how we have financed everything so far and where we're at?
Yes, so Mr. Cecina did reach out. He wants to come that first meeting in February also. Okay. So we'll have a lot of good information.
Sure everybody understands, we've been very judicious and smart in our financing, and we do have the money to do, I don't know what the capital budget is right now, but my guess is we've got the money to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you look at the far right column, all funds total, we're looking at a $95 million budget, $95,222,340.
Excuse me, Michelle, can you highlight sewer there for us? What,
Sure, absolutely, I'm sorry. So sewer, we have it's HRT project, it's a high-rate treatment project. It was over a $30 million project. So that happened in 2024. It's going to linger maybe a little bit into 2025, but it's all in a purchase order, so there's not the additional expenditures. It is on a loan. You know, we definitely could not afford that project to be cash, so it's on a loan. So anything that was expended this year, we have it in the revenue to cover it. Any further questions? Moving on, this kind of breaks down our general fund. It lists every department that we have in the general fund. So police department, fire department are the biggest departments as far as users. This compares 2024 initial budget to the 2025 initial budget. And then the far right column is the percentage of the budget that each department makes up of the total of $32,049,058. Police department and the fire department, they're both, if you add in the police department with the records department, they're both at 19% of what the total expenditures are for the general fund. The other large one down here is going to be your administrative support, which again is your transfers. So administrative support covers any transfers that come out of the general fund to another fund. I do have a slide. The next slide will show us the dollars that are planned for 2025 for the transfers. So this shows 2024 budgeted transfers compared to 2025. The blue numbers are 2024 numbers. The gray numbers are 2025. Starting on the left, transit. This year, in 2024, we budgeted $750,000. Next year, push them to decrease that. So they're at $500,000. That's trying to get transit to be a little more self-sufficient. There's been many years in the past that number was much greater than that $750,000. They have some reductions in items that they're looking at as far as operating hours, and they are doing a fare increase of 50 cents in the new year. So rides for transit are going from $1.50 to $2 next year. But there's still work to be done. It's a constant item that we're meeting with transit and looking at what they have coming in and what they have going out. Park and Rec is the next area that gets the general fund transfer. They're staying consistent at $275,000 next year. Public art by ordinance, they get 1% of the admissions tax. So right now, the admissions tax for 2024, we're sitting at about $9.6 million, and we still have one more month of collection. So this is budgeted at $105,000, but they will actually get exactly 1% of whatever the admissions tax collection is this year. They'll get that amount transferred to public art next year. Programming is the next piece. So programming is another one set by ordinance. They get 10% of the lodging tax. So whatever we collect in lodging tax in 2024, programming and marketing will get 10%. Right now, the lodging tax is just over $2 million. It's about $2.1 million. We still have a month of collection, so they will get exactly 10% of whatever lodging tax collects this year. The next line is housing grants. So housing beautification and development grants, they will have a $400,000 subsidy for the general fund, from the general fund next year. That is our housing beautification program where people, anything they do on the exterior, you know, they can get city dollars if they apply and go through the process. They can get city funds to help offset their housing expenses. It's a great program. The next one is economic development grants. So those are the business grants. That's staying at $500,000 for next year. The next line is issue 8. So that goes back a couple years, but that's staying consistent. It's $1.5 million that we transfer over to issue 8. That takes care of streets, parks and recs, facilities, and planning. That makes up that $1.5 million. The next one is the emissions tax, staying at $4.5 million is the figure to transfer from general fund over to the capital projects for promises from the emissions and parking tax. That would be the Cedar Point partnership that we had. There's many items in there, one of them being a rec center. We're working towards that rec center still. Items for like the causeway. We have community development dollars in there that make up that $4.5 million. The next two are staying the same. Fire pension and police pension, that takes care of exactly what it says, the pension requirements for our firemen and pension requirements on the police officers. It is worth noting there is a bill out there right now where the fire pension, the city pays 24% of every dollar for the fire department. For every wage dollar that they earn, we put 24% into their pension. The city puts 19.5% in for the police department. So there is a movement out there to increase that to match fire departments. So we're watching that to see if there's any movement on that. But that is proposed to move the police department's pension to 24%. It's not all in one. It's like a 6-year, great like rollout period to get that increased to 24%. But we're watching that. If that comes to fruition, we'll have to make adjustments to the pension as we go along. And the last column here is the payroll stabilization column. So it is noted it's a $25,000 decrease, but I'm happy to report as of the end of November, we had $941,922.20 in that fund. So we typically make that entry at the end of the year. Anybody that has left the city this year, retirements, payouts, when someone goes to retire, we make that entry here at the end of the year. As of yesterday, we had $118,000 that we'll be making an entry for, moving it from the general fund over to the payroll stabilization fund. We do have one more retirement here in December. I look for it to be about a $200,000 expense total for the year that we'll be taking out of payroll stabilization. So we'll still have a healthy balance of about $740,000 in there. Payroll stabilization fund was meant to take care of people when they retire. When they retire. It's also meant to take care of when we have that additional pay period in the year. So
When's that come again?
it is in 2032.
2032, okay, well, I'll tell you what.
It'll be here quick. It'll be here quick.
Dennis, that's your problem.
So we have those funds available. There are a lot of retirements that are on the horizon in 2026 that we are aware of. So we have some people in the safety forces that must retire in 2026.
Sometimes you get surprised.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I know our city manager is going to be here for 10 more years. He just told me yesterday, so we're good there for a while at least. So on the bottom, it tells you here, our total amount of transfers for 2025 is $9,845,000. And again, that just shows you the breakdown of where those dollars are going. Here's our number of full-time employees by department. Going back to 2022, we have 2023, 2024, and 2025 listed. In that 2025 column, I just highlighted in blue anything that is a change from 2024. So the first one that changes is the Parks and Public Realm. They have 9 employees. Parks and Public Realm is made up of our greenhouse, our grounds department, and our Parks and Public Realm. Grounds, greenhouse, yes, and Public Realm make up those departments. So that's 9 employees that we have. Recreation Department, this is kind of a swap. We had an employee that was in the Recreation Department, and they're now going to be more out of the Community Development Department. So you'll see a decrease in Recreation, and well, you will see a decrease in Community Development because they did have somebody that was full-time that went to part-time. And the last change is down here in traffic. We had to, we didn't have it budgeted in 2024, but in 2025, we need to stay with 3 people in our traffic division. So this is basically our electricians that work on a lot of different items throughout the city. We have pending retirements, 2 long-term employees that have been in the traffic division. We have noticed that we have 1 retirement for sure next year. So we had backfilled that position early this year for training. There's so many things that they do out in the plant, street lights, loops, and things like that that they need to get up to speed. So we have 3 employees that are budgeted in the traffic division, and that's set to remain the same in 2025. Total employee count remains at 255 employees for 2025. That is consistent with the same number that we have budgeted in 2024. One item to note is, our employee count did rise, but if you recall, we did have the agreement with Cedar Point that we were going to hire 5 additional police officers to provide the police force services out there. So if you look at the 2022 figure for the police department, we had 48 officers. We're now at 53. So those 5 officers are to help with the Cedar Point police protection, and we do get the funds reimbursed to offset for those expenditures.
Question to Mr. Orzak. you and I were discussing the fact you're still down a couple of officers in the police department. I don't know what's in the, so does that 53, is that where you want to get to, or is that where you're at?
53 is the full strength of the budget of.
But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, so.
Fire department's at full strength right now. You know, in their budget and their staff, we just hired another firefighter, so they're at full strength. We've been having trouble nationally and throughout the state and everywhere with hiring police officers. There's a lot less people that are interested in that profession. We're aggressively doing lateral transfers and things like that other departments, it's like a free agent market. Officers anywhere can.
Is it a pay situation, or is it they just find another place? The grass is greener. I mean, are we at a level of pay that we can maintain our officers? Because again, I think that's critical, in my opinion.
Well, we're in, obviously in contract negotiations, so I'm not going to comment too much on that. But
Fault anything, but
our pay's fairly well for our area. It's not as well for bigger cities like Lorraine or
No, I mean, there's
North
quality of life
Ridgeville or
there,
something
too.
like that. We've had a number of officers that have left for higher wage jobs. We haven't seen that in the fire profession. They generally are leaving because they're hired from outside the area, more towards Cleveland area, and then they get a job closer to home, or, you know, in different markets. So the police is definitely, it's like everyone's they're raising rates everywhere to try to lure people into the profession. So our law director and chief have worked on things to make our lateral transfer program better and more competitive, so as well as the union. So we're encouraged by where we're at, but we still need to get over the hump. I would just add that as far as the staffing levels, we're at a staffing level that we're over a staffing level that we were at typically, absent the Cedar Point, taking over Cedar Point. So we have more than enough officers that are covering the streets of Sandusky. It's more of manning the park when the park operations are. So we're having to pay the officers overtime, you know, to go staff that, where we were going to backfill some of those with the new hires. So as far as the safety and the staffing levels, we're above where we should be. We're just not at the maximum that we want to be at with the increase of the covering Cedar Point.
thank you.
Sorry, I was long-winded.
I just think that's, in today's day and age, I think it's critical that the way everybody is jumping. I had a conversation last night with my good friend on Kelly's Island. He's pulling his hair out, and he can't find anybody to do anything. So, but thanks for, again, it's,
And if I can just,
in my opinion, would be is, obviously, we don't want to throw money out the door, but your cost of training has got to be substantial.
yeah,
Sometimes we could, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to boost the salary up than supposed to do the training.
yeah. So if I could just have a few minutes and thank all of you for your service to this board. It's very valuable. Hope you have a happy holiday. And I also want to give Michelle and Sally a shout out. The budget and the number of hours that Michelle puts into this behind the scenes, along with the other directors and people that are doing it. But Michelle does a yeoman's work, and I spent more time doing budgets and she answers all my questions, and I have, I'm, still learning where all the line items are and things like that, but, I want to thank her publicly and Sally for the job that they do. Obviously, with the awards that we receive every year, it goes to the credit and the level of service that their team produces. But she puts in a ton of hours, as does Sally, working on this to try to present this information today, so we appreciate her work.
First of all, on behalf of the committee too, I know that it's a trying time to get through everything, and if you really are bored and want to see line item by line item, not department by department, Michelle sent us something, the whole budget, that's a lot of work. And again, I know you don't do it all yourself, so I'm going to say you and your staff, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You guys act like we're done. We're not done yet. There's more. We appreciate it. It's a trying time, but I do love it in the end. It's what I like to do. So, going back to the full-time employee count, we already covered the police department had that change.
Sorry about interrupting you.
You're fine. You're fine.
Safety service is a big item for me, but
Absolutely. So the other one to note is the fire department. In 2022, their employee count was 48. Through their last contract, that got increased to 51 firefighters. So we gained 3 there. We gained 5 in the police department. So that was 8 employees that we gained. So if you look at our total number of 255, you take those 8 employees away, we were actually less than where we were in 2021. We would be at 247. So we haven't overstaffed, I don't think, at this point. This is the last slide. This shows the historical general fund expenditures. Goes back to 2014, again, just paints that picture of where we were prior to issue 8 coming on board and where we're at today. It shows the rise in expenditures. The blue wave kind of underneath there also shows the general fund cash balance, where we target to be 20%. So that has increased over the years, and that has increased because our expenditures have increased. So it's not that we're just trying to save more money in that reserve, the cash balance reserve that we have in the general fund. That is, our target to be at 20% of whatever our expenditures are for the year. So at the end of 2025, if we're sitting at $6.4 million in cash, because right now our budget is $32 million, we'd be sitting right on target with no issues. And that is the last thing that I had for you guys. Anyone have any questions?
any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make one quick comment. A lot of us have been here for a long time. The first time we sat
Speak for
in,
yourself.
yeah, almost 20 years ago that you, Mr. Murray, Mr. Rusatz, and Mr. Mantra and I sat in with Mike Kresser in his last, when he was outgoing commission president. And he came up with, at that meeting, we had a spreadsheet and we brought everybody in, and it was at night, and they bring your pencils, and at the end of that meeting, he came up with a conclusion that the cash balance should be 18%. Remember that, Mr. Murray?
And we have stuck with that similar thing just because of bond ratings.
Isn't that incredible that it was all done by paper and pencil, and we came up with almost the same thing that we were coming up with 20 years later?
And 20% is now generally considered, from my reading, the gold standard for a rainy day fund for
Yes.
for any government. So it's really great that we have that. It proved its worth when we go out for bond funding, and it's many times, and it's proved its worth during the pandemic. We had a balance that allowed us to remain in business.
Yes.
It was tough, but we stayed in business.
Yes.
It was correct.
And Moody's, every time they rate us, comment on the fact that we are staying at that level. And if you don't think that means something, you ought to take a look at our interest rates and what 0.1% means. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion that we
That's what I was gonna say. Do we need to
recommend
recommend
the,
this to the, okay.
recommend the presented 2025 first draft budget to the city commission.
Okay, motion made.
I will second.
You want to roll call on this or just vote?
Let's do roll call.
Okay.
Make it official. Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Monter?
Yes.
Mr. Ramey?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols? Mr. Rusats?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Mr. Thomasula?
Yes.
Mr. Orzak?
Yes.
And myself, Michelle Reeder, yes. Thank you, guys. One thing to note, I know John already said thank you to you guys, and we really do appreciate everything that you do. I just want to publicly mention that we do have 3 members that their term was expiring this year.
Yep.
We've got them on the hook for another 3 years, so we're good. So Mr. Monter, Mr. Thomasula, and Mr. Ramey, they're going to be with us till the end of 2027. Thank you very much.
Mr. Brady, take care of that.
Yes, he'll be informed to take care of that. Just looking forward in 2025, we have Mr. Nichols, Mr. Rusats, and Mr. Stahl. Terms are expiring at the end of 2025, so hopefully at the end of next year, we'll reach out to get you on the hook for another 3 years of service. And then Mr. Allen, his term expires at the end of 2026, so same thing with him. But really do appreciate everyone's time coming here Friday mornings at 8 a.m. It's really great to have you guys and all your expertise and history and knowledge and helpfulness to get the city where it is. I do appreciate it.
So thank everybody for their service. Again, I think this is a committee that the city commission appreciates, and I think it has worked well for at least 2 or 3 years. It's worked well for a long time, and I think we've got great committee members, and everybody works well. And Michelle, you have done a great job.
Thank you.
So, with that, I will adjourn the regular,
Public participation.
I'm sorry,
If we have any public participation,
that's what I said, I'll adjourn the regular.
Okay.
Don't I have to adjourn and go to public, or do I do, okay. I can never remember that, okay. Okay, anybody from the public? Have any comments? If not, I'll accept a motion for adjournment. I do, though, want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And again, thank you for your service for the year.
I'll second.
So,
all in favor?
favor say aye.
Aye.
Now you can go out in the street and be